What's up guys, it's Ian here back today with another video, and today I'm here to bring you a video on how to adjust your calorie targets for weight loss over a given time frame. I get a lot of individual messages from people asking me about how to calculate weight loss targets and how to adjust their calories over time. This video is intended to teach you how to calculate your own calorie targets for your own weight loss goals given a specific time frame. If you want more individual custom calorie targets and a training plan, definitely contact me or go through my website, Can't Stop These Gains, and you can purchase one-on-one consultations and custom information and plans from me on an individual basis. But this video here should give you all the information that you need to at least get started on your weight loss journey and get you a bit closer to your physique goals in this coming new year. So without further ado, let's jump over to this screen capture and I'm going to walk you through the notes and the explanation behind the process that I've laid out for you here. As titled, How to Adjust Your Calories for a Specific Weight Loss Target Over a Given Time Frame. A pound of pure fat contains 4,100 calories. A pound of human body fat actually contains between 3,436 to 3,752 calories. Body fat is mixed with fluid and protein. Therefore, human body fat is not the same thing as pure fat because human body fat tissue includes other tissues and fluids. I have a link there if you want to read more about it. I'll post that link in the description of the video as well. For the purpose of simplicity in our calculations, we will pretend that 1 pound of human fat contains 3,500 calories, although there is some variance there. Several adjustments and calibration steps will be made along the way also to ensure progress once we have our assigned deficit. We will also assume 1 gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories, 1 gram of protein has 4 calories, and 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. The first step here will be to plug in our information to a total daily energy expenditure calculator to get a good estimate of how much energy we use on a daily basis. The size of a person's total daily energy expenditure estimate will tell us if their diet targets are realistic or not, and whether we can send them into a diet with a high success probability or if we need to talk with them about more realistic goal setting. So this video is not only for you to calibrate your calories on an individual level, but also if you're a coach or a personal trainer wondering how to calculate calorie targets, what are some best practices in terms of setting your clients' calorie targets. Your total daily energy expenditure is essentially your basal metabolic rate multiplied by a number that varies based on your activity levels. Basal metabolic rate is influenced by age, sex, body composition, and more. There are more factors that go into total daily energy expenditure, such as activity levels, environmental temperature, and more. So it's very hard to measure. What we are doing here is estimating your TDEE and then using the info to assign a rough calorie target that can be calibrated and honed in on over time. I will post a link to the total daily energy expenditure calculator that I like to use into the description of the video. Although you can use any TDEE calculator, it's essentially just a calculator. They will all have pretty similar equations plugged into the formula. A few upper end targets for rates of loss, the fastest reasonable rates of loss that might put a diet into the less reasonable category or medical supervision category, are rates of loss above 1% of body weight per week, or a total calorie target that is too low and it places an individual at a risk of either macronutrient and or micronutrient deficiencies. Too low of protein can increase risk of muscle loss in a deficit. In a surplus, you don't require nearly as much protein because the carbohydrates and fats are going to make it so that your body doesn't really have to resort to breaking down its own skeletal muscle at nearly the same rate that it would in a deficit. So too low of protein is definitely a bigger issue in a deficit. Too low of fat can cause hormonal issues as well as other issues. Too low of carbohydrates can cause low energy, tiredness, poor exercise performance, and more. Although gluconeogenesis, the creation of glucose from proteins, and ketone production from fats can obviate low carbohydrate issues in some individuals, individual variation in physiology can make certain individuals inefficient at creating ATP from proteins and fats alone in the absence of carbs. So certain certain individuals are much more effective at the gluconeogenesis from proteins and utilizing ketones from fats as an energy source. Certain individuals just have a really hard time using ketones as an energy source. That's why I don't tell anybody to get onto the ketogenic diet. Although if you've had success with the ketogenic diet in the past, definitely consider it. If it improves your adherence to the diet, then keep doing what you're doing. The macronutrient breakdowns and percentages in this video may not apply to you if you're into keto, but the general takeaway concepts and the overall calorie targets will. You'll just have to adjust each of the individual macronutrient levels. This is not an exhaustive list of the risks of macronutrient deficiencies here, just a few to give reasoning to cap rates of loss at some theoretical point. A true reasonable rate of macronutrient deficit will really hinge on the size of an individual's TDEE. An individual with a total daily energy expenditure of 4,000 calories a day can much more easily cope with a deficit of 1,000 calories than an individual with a total daily energy expenditure of 2,000 calories a day can cope with that same 1,000 calorie a day deficit. So you can imagine that two individuals with the same total magnitude of deficit are going to react to that deficit differently based on what percentage of their total calories the deficit represents and also what their target calories becomes. So we care about the percentage of calories being reduced. We also care about the total amount of calories. Essentially, can this individual get in enough of each macronutrient and also have sufficient micronutrient intake on a daily basis once we assign them that calorie target. Micronutrient deficiencies can create a broad range of issues that we will not delve into here because each micronutrient deficiency has its own series of issues that can be very unique. If you want to learn more about that, I can make a video series in the future going over each of the micronutrients. I'd recommend studying a bit of nutrition if you're into that stuff. It's enough info for its own video, so I'm not going to add on too much about that here, but the main takeaway is to continue to monitor your blood work every 3 to 12 months, eat sufficient fruits and vegetables, high quality protein sources in order to have the best chance of staying in range of macronutrients and micronutrients intakes during your diet and your overall lifespan. Eating a well-balanced diet is something that you want to do for your whole life, regardless of whether you're in a calorie deficit or not. Let's talk about the lower end of rates of loss. The slowest reasonable rates of loss are generally going to be around 1 pound of tissue loss per week. The rationale here is that losing weight slower than 1 pound a week makes it very difficult to track progress, and the gray area between actual tissue loss and water and food weight fluctuations can cloud the real amounts of tissue lost. We say tissue lost because it's impossible to guarantee that no muscle will be lost. We have strategies to mitigate that, such as staying within a desirable protein range, not making the deficit too big, engaging in resistance training. These are all best practices to prevent unwanted muscle loss, but we cannot guarantee the absence of muscle loss. To best monitor rates of loss, I recommend weighing yourself at the same time of day, preferably in the morning, post-void, pre-water and food. So that's after you use the bathroom, first thing in the morning, between 3 to 7 times a week, evenly distributed. Then you take the total number of weigh-ins and average them out across each week and each 2 to 4 week period, and this is going to help you monitor your rates of loss. If you're just weighing yourself 3 times a week, weigh yourself every other day. If you're willing to weigh yourself 7 times a week, that's even better. It gives you more information. This multi-day a week weigh-in strategy will give you the best chance of honing in on rates of tissue loss and being less confused by things such as water and sodium balance and food weight fluctuations if you're not eating consistent items on a day-to-day basis. The amount of water your body can hold varies greatly. The amounts of just food that you hold in your GI tract can vary greatly on a daily and several day basis as well. Before I get into the examples, I will go over some best practices, common dieting pitfalls, and some of the calibration methods that you can use to adjust for rates of loss or lack of weight loss progress. Best practices. I recommend diet durations between 8 weeks and 16 weeks, followed by equal length maintenance phases. Fat cells don't necessarily die off during a diet phase. Many remain but shrink. The maintenance phase helps you maintain your new body weight level. As long as you aren't too far below your natural set point, the objective of the maintenance phase here is to attempt to place a soft reset on your body's set point. This is very difficult to do, but maintenance gives you a better chance of accomplishing accomplishing this goal than going straight into the next diet. The diet duration is a major key takeaway here. I think 12 weeks is a good starting point, although if you have a very aggressive diet, 8 weeks is fine. I don't really recommend 4 weeks because it's hard to see much progress over 4 weeks, so 8 weeks is usually a good short beginning diet. Unless you have experience and have succeeded at 12-week diets in the past, I don't recommend going over 12 weeks or 16 weeks. You can go for that 16-week diet or 4-month diet if you're making great progress and things are going in the right direction, you don't feel burnt out and you feel good. Just continue that diet. So just check in with yourself and see how you feel as you pass that 8-week checkpoint, the 12-week checkpoint, and if you still feel good at 12 weeks, consider pushing on to 16 weeks. Too often, I'll see individuals be kind of wishy-washy with their diet. They'll do really well 3 or 4 days out of the week, and then they'll kind of turn up and eat whatever on the weekend, like 3 or 4 days. We talked about how a 2 to 4 month diet is kind of that beginner sweet spot. A lot of individuals, they'll drag out a diet 8 months or 12 months. They won't have the loss that they want to see, and they also have the psychological stress of just failing at dieting for so long because they've dragged it out for so long. On a weekly balance of calories, they're barely in a deficit or just not in a deficit. It's better to just be very dedicated for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever you select, stick to it, and then go into maintenance and enjoy your life. You want to enjoy your eating and enjoy your life, enjoy your training, not torture yourself by drawing it out longer than it has to, and also with the lack of results. Once you diet for too long, your body will do everything it can to try to hold on to those calories. Definitely watch out for that. And now we're going to get onto some pitfalls in the dieting process. Slowing progress due to lowering total daily energy expenditure as the diet progresses. As you diet down and lose more weight, your body will actually move around less outside of formal exercise, limit unnecessary movements, and attempt to conserve energy in an attempt to prevent weight loss. Weight loss isn't very functional, and our physiology is more geared towards survival than aesthetics. Do your best to keep moving around, and keep in mind that moving more doesn't mean you get to eat more by a significant margin. Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. The key point here is that your exercise levels are already factored into your total daily energy expenditure estimate. Unless you're adding an amount of exercise that bumps you into an entirely different activity level range, it's best to just keep the calories on target instead of adding food because you did an extra hour of cardio or something. If you think about it, an hour of cardio doesn't really buy you that many calories. It's very easy to overdo the eating, and I commonly have clients try to add calories just because they did a bit of cardio. Sometimes an hour of cardio might burn you 100 calories, a couple hundred if you're really going in on the cardio, but it also adds fatigue. It might influence your performance in the weights negatively. There's definitely a good time and place to add in cardio over cutting food. If your calories are just getting too low and you're like, coach, I just need some more food, then it's okay. But just be very aware of how much food you are actually adding in place of the cardio that you're adding, because you'd be surprised if you look at how many calories you're actually burning. A lot of these machines in the gym, they don't really measure calories accurately. Unless you have a heart rate monitor or a direct VO2 mask measuring your gas exchange, it's very hard to estimate or measure the amount of calories burned during cardio. A lot of people overestimate how much calories that they're really using during their cardio. Main takeaway from that is that there are scenarios where it is appropriate to add calories and just do a little bit more cardio if you just feel too much hunger in your diet process and you're willing to do a little bit more work just to eat a little bit more food. But I often see this misapplied due to a fundamental misunderstanding of how total daily energy expenditure is calculated. If you want further clarification on this topic, comment down below and I will discuss it more. With these things out of the way, let's get into our examples segment of the video. I'm going to show you 2 different examples here of hypothetical individuals. These are not real people. These are just one male example, one female example, and then kind of a template that I will put in the video description for you to make yourself your own custom plan or practice some of this math, assigning calorie targets to some of your clients. Just keep in mind the top end rates of loss and low end rates of loss. So keep in mind that you don't want to give somebody too big of a deficit because there can be negative health effects from it, and you don't want to give somebody too low of a deficit because they might just make no progress and become disillusioned with the whole training process. Person A is a 24-year-old, 5'9", 180-pound male at 20% body fat who exercises 5 days per week. Plugging his info into the total daily energy expenditure calculator, we get a total daily energy expenditure estimate of 2,760 calories per day. As another main takeaway point, it's not really up to you as a trainer to assign people goals. I always say say that I just facilitate people's goals. So this person is coming to me with the goals, and I'm just coming to them with the info of how they would reach those goals. So they come in with their goal. Their doctor can tell them to lose weight. You can't really tell somebody to lose weight as a trainer. If they ask what you think, then sure. Yeah, maybe getting from 20% body fat down to 15% body fat as a male will improve their health and longevity. There's not really going to be much health or longevity benefit getting below 15% as a male. So this guy here wants to lose 10 pounds in 10 weeks. 1 pound a week at 180 pounds is actually only 0.5% of his body weight per week. This target is not only reasonable, but it should be quite easy or doable at least, even for a first-time dieter. This is not an aggressive diet. I definitely have faith that our guy here can get this done. 10 pounds of fat times 3,500 calories per pound of fat gives us 35,000 calories. 10 weeks gives us 70 days. So our guy here is trying to distribute an overall calorie deficit of 35,000 calories over 70 days, which averages out to 500 calories a day of deficit. His target calories will be his total daily energy expenditure subtracting his calories per day of deficit. So his TDEE of 2760, which we have above, we're subtracting 500 calories a day. So his target is roughly 2,200 calories a day. Let's get down to these ranges. So the protein range that I'll recommend is anywhere from 0.7 grams per pound of body weight up to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, depending on preference, budget, how well you digest large amounts of protein, and other historical factors that are going to vary from person to person. Then you'll take the grams of protein, multiply that by 4 calories per gram, and you have calories of protein. The fat range is either going to be 20% to 40% of daily calorie target, or at least 50-60 grams a day, depending on preference. So if that 20 to 40% range yields less than 50 or 60 grams of fat a day, I usually default to at least 50 or 60 grams a day. If the 20% to 40% is above that range, then I'm not too worried about too little fat. Then it's more just personal preference and how you would like to distribute your calories for yourself, or more importantly, how your client wants to distribute their calories. If they don't know, just a brief survey here can help. Like, how much fatty food do they enjoy? A lot of people get defensive when you ask that question, but there's a lot of tasty foods out there. Bone-in meats, most red meats, fish, nuts, avocados, cooking oils, dressings. There's a lot of high-fat foods that people don't perceive to be high-fat. A lot of the time when you say the phrase, do you like high-fat foods? They just think like, you're accusing me of eating ice cream, or you're accusing me of just slathering on butter to stuff. And it's like, no, it's not that. I just want to know how to distribute macronutrients and keep you in range and get you a realistic diet that you're relatively happy with. All right, then we'll take the grams of fat and multiply it by 9 calories a gram to get the calories from fat. If we went the percentage route and just did percentage of daily calories, we'll take the total calorie target after deducting the deficit from it, that total calorie target, multiply it by the percentage of daily calories they want to dedicate to fat calories, and then we'll divide the total calories from fat by 9 calories per gram, and we'll wind up with grams of fat. So either way we go into that, we can either wind up with calories from fat or grams of fat. In this example, we're going to show you how to do this with this individual just selecting to have 30% of their daily calories coming from fat. In the next example, we'll show you how to assign a grams of fat target and get calories from that. Carbohydrates will be target calories, subtracting fat calories and protein calories. Then we wind up with calories of carbohydrates divided by 4 calories per gram, and then we get a number of grams of carbohydrates. It's good to give your clients the number of grams of each macronutrient. That way they can plug it into MyFitnessPal or read the packaging of the items that they're consuming. Just look up the nutrition facts of the items they're consuming. So that way they have the ability to develop a conceptual framework of the dieting process. Not only so they understand the process now, but also to help them going forward. There are a lot of ways that we can assign the macros for person A here. This example will give you one way of doing it. Ultimately, you'll want to interview your clients, ask them information about their preferences, what they've liked in the past, what they've had success with in the past, and that will play a big role in how you distribute these macronutrients. It's not necessarily up to you to tell them to eat specific food items. That's a very complicated thing that can vary based on genetics and a lot of other things. It is reasonable to give them a macronutrient target as long as it's not too outlandish, way too high, way too low, right? Because if you really think about it fundamentally, they would probably just put their info into a calculator online anyways, and they might wind up with an even less reasonable distribution of macronutrients. So for this individual, we're just going to assign 0.8 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So we got 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight multiplied by 180 pounds. That gives us 144 grams of protein. 144 grams of protein multiplied by 4 calories per gram, and we get 576 calories of protein. For fat, we have his total daily calorie target after the deficit is subtracted, so not the TDEE, but the target itself of 2200 calories multiplied by 0.3 or 30% of his total daily calories, and we wind up with 660 calories of fat. 660 calories of fat divided by 9 calories per gram, and we wind up with 74 grams of fat. His carbohydrates will just equal 2200 total calories subtracted by parentheses 660 calories of fat plus 576 calories of protein close parentheses, and we wind up with 964 calories from carbs divided by 4 calories a gram, and we wind up with 241 grams of carbs. So we end up with a rounded off 150 grams of protein or 600 calories of protein, 70 grams of fat or 630 calories from fat, 240 grams of carbs or 960 calories from carbs, for a total daily target of 2190 calories per day. It's impossible to really measure out, 576 calories of protein or, 144 grams of protein. So I just rounded off each of the gram amounts. Makes it a lot easier to count up his actual food items that he is eating. All right, let's get into example number 2. Person B is a 30-year-old, 5'4", 160-pound female at 30% body fat who exercises 5 days per week. Plugging her info into the total daily energy expenditure calculator, we get a total daily energy expenditure estimate of 2274 calories per day. Person B wants to lose 20 pounds in 12 weeks, which is roughly 1.67 pounds per week. 1.67 pounds per week divided by 160 pounds equals 0.01044 or 1.04% body weight per week. This target is technically possible and can be realistic for an experienced dieter, but at just above 1% body weight loss per week, I would personally never recommend this for a first-time dieter. Faster rates of loss can get you to your goal faster, but they can also affect energy levels, are unsustainable for longer diets, and may lead to burnout and poor exercise performance. Monitor your health and blood work, as everybody responds differently to extreme diets, and this diet severity is definitely less suitable for a first-time dieter or someone beginning their fitness journey. To humor our hypothetical client, we will input the numbers and show you the math involved in this aggressive diet, and at the end give you a few more thoughts on what I think about it once we have the numbers to show you. Person B is trying to lose 20 pounds of fat in 12 weeks. So we got 20 pounds of fat times 3,500 calories per pound of fat. That's 70,000 calories. 12 weeks times 7 days a week is 84 days. So we have a total deficit of 70,000 calories over 84 days, which averages out to 834 calories per day of deficit. We're going to take that 2,274 calories a day of maintenance. We're going to subtract the 834 calories a day of deficit and get our 1,440 calories per day target. Now we're going to stop here and pause to talk for a sec. This overall daily calorie target, after we have subtracted the deficit and we know what our actual target is, this is going to be a key point that you just want to think about and consider. This is something to stop and think about. If the total calorie target is too low, then the diet is just unreasonable. It doesn't really matter how you organize the macronutrients. If their total calories are too low, they're at risk of some or all of the issues that we mentioned above. The too little protein, losing a bunch of muscle, the too little fat, running into hormonal issues, the too little carbs, poor performance and inability to train the way they want to. Any or all of these factors will definitely impact their training and quality of life, and it's just not worth it. It'll either lead to burnout or being disillusioned with the overall dieting process, and we definitely don't want to inflict that upon the people that we are training or coaching. Now, 1,440 calories a day, is that reasonable? I think that is reasonable. If it was any lower than that, like 1,200, 1,000 calories a day, I probably would not go with it. But 1,440 calories a day, I think if you're consuming only whole foods, as we mentioned, a lot of vegetables, fruits, high quality protein sources, whatever the individual prefers as far as their protein sources, but high quality sources, fruits and vegetables, 1,440 calories is enough that they can reasonably get enough protein, fat, enough carbohydrates, and hit their micronutrient targets as long as they are sticking to a mostly whole food diet. So this is where you really gotta think about the type of person you have in front of you. Is this person really likely to give up all their processed foods and stick to an only whole foods diet? If so, then 1,440 calories is actually plenty of calories if you're only eating whole foods. But if they're not willing to give up their processed foods, that 1440 calories is not going to get you very far. So just think about the person you have in front of you, and that's also going to determine how realistic this is. If this is somebody with experience dieting, maybe a physique competitor who is accustomed to eating whole foods, willing to give up their processed foods, that's going to make this 1440 a lot more reasonable of an overall calorie target to adhere to. Now that we've established that the 1440 calories a day target is reasonable for certain individuals, given these criteria, let's get into the number ranges and the macronutrient targets. There are a lot of ways that we can assign macros for person B. This is just one example. And here we're going to go 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight multiplied by 160 pounds equals 128 grams of protein. 128 grams of protein multiplied by 4 calories a gram equals 512 calories of protein. Fat. 60 grams of fat multiplied by 9 calories per gram equals 540 calories of fat. I told you this example was going to be different. We're calculating it from the opposite end instead of percentage, because 30% of person B's total calorie intake would only result in 1440 times 0.3 equals 432 calories, or 48 grams. 48 grams of fat falls below our minimum threshold of fat that we described above, that kind of 50 or 60 grams range. I deliberately set her fat to either a minimum of 50 or 60 grams. If you have a person in front of you, again, just ask them what their preference is. Here, we just selected 60 grams of fat as a nice default, which equals 540 calories of fat. So we just took that 60 grams of fat multiplied by 9 calories a gram, and we wind up with 540 calories of fat. So we showed you how to either take the grams of fat and get calories, or to take the percentage of total calories, and get grams of fat. Either way, you'll be able to do that dimensional analysis and get a good calorie target, whether it's grams or calories. Carbohydrates. We got the 1440 total calories subtracted by parentheses 540 calories of fat plus 512 calories of protein, close parentheses, and we wind up with 388 calories of carbohydrates. 388 calories of carbohydrates divided by 4 calories per gram gives us 97 grams of carbohydrates. So we end up with a rounded off 130 grams of protein, rounded up from 128, or 520 calories of protein. 60 grams of fat, or 540 calories of fat, the 60 was already rounded, and 100 grams of carbohydrates, or 400 calories of carbs. I rounded up the 100 from 97. This individual's deficit was already pretty big, so we rounded up a little bit. Usually in a deficit, if their deficit's not too big, I will round down their calories. If their deficit is already really big, we can round up the calories a little bit. Just use common sense there. I just like rounding to give the individual some nice round gram targets to either put into MyFitnessPal or to read the packaging on. There's no way to calculate or measure out 97 grams of carbs, so 100 grams of carbs, 130 protein, 60 fat, nice even numbers there, making it easy to calculate. And we get a total target of 1460 calories per day. The difference between her actual target of 1440 and 1460, you can't really measure 20 calories with any real consistency. 1460 calories a day, reasonable target. It's a big deficit, pretty sizable diet, difficult undertaking, but if you have an experienced individual, I think it is realistic. If you're on a whole food based diet, lots of vegetables, fruits, high quality protein sources, healthy fats, you can pretty reasonably get in all your micronutrients on 1460 calories a day. Although if you are having issues with hunger and satiety, that is also important. If you run your blood work and it's not looking too good, that's also important. So just keep in mind, even though you can technically be healthy on that 1460 calories a day, if it doesn't work for you on an individual level, more calibration is needed. All right, so we talked about how the total daily energy expenditure is really just an estimate. These calorie values change on a day-to-day basis based on how fidgety you are, how much you move your hands around. Even recording this video, I probably used up a few calories. Probably not that many, but I'm going to put this text into the video description. It's just a template of the same template from person A and person B that we went over, and it's just titled Person C wants to lose X pounds in Y weeks, custom example, practice with your numbers here. So we got that whole layout: pounds of fat, calories per pound of fat, number of calories, number of days, the time frame, target calories per day, and we got the ranges, all those ranges, a lot of ways you can assign the macronutrients, a lot of that's just personal preference, individual history. When you're talking to a real client, it's basically like an interview. You're asking them about their past experiences, successes, failures, some of the reasons why they think they might have succeeded or failed at some of these endeavors, and that's going to give you a better idea of how to manage their weight loss progress going forward. Hopefully you found this video useful. Hopefully it'll help you reach your targets in the new year. If you used my sample template, go ahead and comment down below what your total daily energy expenditure, your target calories, and your macronutrient breakdown ended up being. And if you have any questions, definitely comment. I'll respond as soon as I see it, as soon as I have a good answer. If the question is good enough, I might even make a video about it if I feel like it's a really good question, or if there's a key point that I left out in this video, definitely let me know. It took me a little while to write this up, but I did do it all in one day. This is just kind of off the top of my head, some of the questions that I'll ask an individual in a fitness intake consultation, just helping somebody determine macronutrient targets for weight loss. This is some of the information that I think about when I'm creating calorie targets, assigning macronutrient targets for an individual. So once again, hopefully you found it useful. Thank you for coming and watching. If you made it this far into the video, you're definitely a true fan, and I appreciate it. Comment down below, share it with your friends if you found it useful, dislike it if you feel like it, and don't let anybody stop your gains. I'm just kidding. Don't dislike it, like it. But did you know dislikes actually count as a form of engagement? So it's better to dislike it than to do nothing at all. Let's get that engagement up, no matter what it is. Let's go.